that, Environmental Commission meeting.
Thank you, Amiko. The first item of business is special announcements, and I want to recognize and welcome our new committee member, Shei-Ping Liu. I thought maybe we'd take a minute and Shei-Ping, maybe you would like to at least to give yourself a brief introduction to the other committee members.
Sure. Thanks, Don. I'm Shei-Ping Liu. I have been resident at Los Altos for more than 20 years, and I live in the Woodland Acres neighborhood. I recently retired from over 30 years working in drug development industry, and I have been, personally very paying a lot of attention to environmental issue. I think that, we are living in a very prestigious neighborhoods in our town here. And I think, all of us strive to, preserve it and do what we can. And I'm happy to be one of the team members here, and would very much like to know all of you, in depth with time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shei-Ping. On now to, and if there's any members of the public wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, and Amiko, since I don't have any, well, you got the controls, so you have to let me know if there's anybody wishing to speak.
Okay, let me check here. I'm going to go ahead and unmute all. If I can, let's see. There is somebody, oh no, that's you, Dawn. I think you're the one that called in with the 415 number. Let's see. I do see Addie from Lake Cat, but I think she wants to speak on an item that is on the agenda, if I'm correct on that one. Is that right, Addie?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we don't have any, Dawn.
Okay, thank you very much. The first item of business is the minutes of the March 8th meeting that was included with the agenda package. Any questions or comments on the meeting minutes?
I move approval of the meeting minutes. This is Laura.
I'll second.
Okay, that was a second by Bruno.
Okay, we'll take a roll call. When I call your name, just say whether or not you are in favor or not. Commissioner Delagnu?
Yes.
Commissioner Humayun?
Yes.
Commissioner Liu?
Yes.
Commissioner Texler?
Yes.
Commissioner Whedon?
Yes.
Commissioner Wan?
Yes.
Okay, and it passes 6-0.
Okay, we'll move on to the second item on the agenda, informational items, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, the status report. I think what first we'll do is if you want to give us a summary, Amiko, and then sort of the lead of our committee is Bruno, then we'll switch it to Bruno and any subcommittee for any additions, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start with the summary. Of course, as always, Bruno, if I leave something out, just let me know. So most of the data is in, and the team was shown the preliminary results from the 2018 inventory. And that was in comparison to the 2005. I know you can't see this, Dawn, but I am going to share my screen just to show, and this information came in after we were posting, so I wasn't able to include it because we just had a meeting with the consultant on the 9th. So let's see here. There's my, so I think most of you will be able to see this. Let me, actually, hold on one second. Sorry about that. I gotta turn this off in order to do this. Okay. And let me know if you guys can see that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I said, there were, this is preliminary. There is still a little bit of the data that has yet to be received, which makes up about probably a very small percent. I think it was something in the 3% range. And also there was a number of follow-up questions once this information was shared around some of the waste, energy, and transportation results. And so the consultant is also looking into a few of those particular data items and methodologies behind that. And so their plan is to come back to the group when we meet again and have a follow-up with detailed methodologies for the emission sectors. And so this was done through ClearPath. So ClearPath has a baseline method using certain factors like population growth, economic growth, and things, fuel use to forecast the emissions. And as you can see here, there was quite a reduction since 2005 to the 2008 emissions that resulted in pretty significant reductions on some of these particular sectors, which according to this shows that it's about a total of 36%, which is about equivalent to 67,268 amounting in the emissions reduction. As I mentioned before, there were a lot of questions as to how some of these reductions were achieved. If you look at the first year, that was in 2005. So there was quite a lot that had happened between that time period, between 2005 and 2018, within the city, one being the joining Silicon Valley Clean Energy, among many other things. In 2007, the Green Building Ordinance, also many other ordinances that have contributed to a lot of this, but the consultant does want to do a more thorough investigation to make sure that the reductions that we see are in fact true. So that's why they're saying they were okay with us sharing this as long as, you know, we did let you know that it is preliminary at this point.
And Miko, can I ask questions now?
Dawn, I think is that okay, or did you want me to finish the summary?
Either way, whichever way you're more comfortable, Amico.
Okay, I mean, I don't mind.
May I ask, is this the daily average in the year of 2018? For example, what the quantity that we're tracking here?
This is for the year.
For the whole year, cumulatively.
Right, you're talking about the 2018 emission numbers that they're showing?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, I you know, it's my first time, so I'm just curious how they, you know, the units and how they're measuring that. Is this being monitored pretty much every year now?
Yeah, so the data that's retrieved is, comes from all these different agencies and whatnot. And so that is done on a yearly basis for them. It's just the what am I trying to say? The analysis that they're doing, they select a year. So that's not done yearly, but the tracking of it is done yearly.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Hey, just to clarify, I just want, because there are, yeah, obviously it's just numbers and there is no reference, nothing, but it's in metric tons and it's total for the year 2005 and 2018 for each sector. And 2018 is the latest we have. We don't have 2019 yet. So a lot of what we'll be doing this year on the CAP will be based on 2018 and looking forward at 2030 targets and so on. But that's the latest year we have, so that's the best we have right now.
Correct. Thank you, Bruno. And then I will cover another portion of it, which is the vulnerability assessment. So they use CalAdapt, a CalAdapt tool, and that provides a view of how climate change might affect California, and then how, specifically how it would relate to Los Altos. So for Los Altos, it was broken into different sectors, temperature and drought. So what it predicts is that average temperatures and the number of extreme heat days are projected to increase throughout the century, according to CalAdapt. And then the number of extreme heat days are projected to be almost 300 times more in a high emission scenario than a medium scenario. Weather droughts get worse, and like one of the things that they explained was like longer prolonged periods with below average or no precipitation. Then they go into precipitation. So Los Altos has experienced, numerous severe winter storms that have caused flooding, and multiple climate models predict at least one severe storm a year under high emission scenarios. Wildfires and air pollution is another section. And so wildfires were not projected to be significantly worse in the future. But the average area burned by wildfires is projected to decrease regionally. Los Altos and the surrounding area is not high risk, though relative risk for natural areas is projected to increase slightly. So that was part of that, and part of the climate action plan is also to do adaptation based on the vulnerability assessment. So that is a key part as well. We also have a summary on the outreach and engagement, as that is a big part of what will be involved to develop the CAP. And so the outreach and engagement subcommittee met about the third week of March and discussed, initial goals and strategies and timelines. I had included a table in the packet, and that, although some of the dates are subject to change, outlines what focus group meetings we'll be having. There's a public workshop and then surveys. So the goal is to have a survey out by the end of this month. So we're working on finalizing that. And then also to have the first focus group meeting by the end of this month as well. And then the next steps for the consultant is they're completing some of that data collection I had mentioned earlier. There was a small portion that they were still waiting for some numbers to come in for, and then completion of emissions forecasts, and then setting the targets, and then developing the measures. And I will give Bruno a chance to chime in if there's anything that he wants to add to that.
Thank you, Emiko. I think you did a very good job, so I don't think I have much to add. I can maybe answer some questions with you if people have questions, but I think you've summarized where we are right now with that project.
Yes, I'm happy to answer questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Sally. I just see your chat now, and I can share that so that I will, while we're taking questions, I'm just going to share that so that it's a little bit bigger.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Let's see.
So I had a question. When you say setting the targets, you know, how is that going to happen? Is that going to be the consultant? And by the targets, I mean, you know, I assume you mean first you're going to, there's going to be the overall target, and there were some examples, right, of what different municipalities have done. Is it, you know, net zero emissions by 2050, or is it, you know, some percent below where we're at now, or whatever our goal is? But is that going to be done by the consultant or as a collaborative process, or how is the commission going to be involved and the public going to be involved in that?
I can take that question. Sorry, I have to stop sharing because I just got a message from Don and I need to unmute him here really quick, and then I will answer that. Oh, I don't think you are on mute as far as I can see, but let me try to mute and unmute and see if that helps. Let me know, Don, if that worked. So I would, and the way I envision this going is that the consultant will, based on when they do get the final numbers, will have their own sort of targets that they would suggest, but it is up to us. It is up to, you know, everyone who's involved, who has been involved, and taking into consideration the stakeholder group's input to determine what those will ultimately be. So it would be a combination. You know, I would think that they would suggest something based on where we are and what they've seen and what they can project. And then, you know, it's up to us to say, you know, maybe that's too high, or maybe that's too low, or we think we can do this, you know, and then we work together with them to try to see how we can come up with a plan to do that.
Okay, I would just ask that the subcommittee, you know, I would say at least the top goal, the main goal of the CAP is it's a policy stance. You know, it's a visionary thing. It's more than just let's look at the numbers and figure out where, you know, what we can do if we kind of go along in the same fashion. It could be either aspirational, or it could be, you know, more of a, you know, again, what can we achieve if we continue on the path we're in, or with a little bit extra effort? So I feel like that needs to be something that's developed with the commission, perhaps the council, the community, that, again, how much are we really going to be aspirational on that goal?
Yes, and I am writing this down. Dawn, did I unmute you correctly?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine. I guess, why don't you finish answering Laura's question, and then we'll see if there's any other commissioner questions.
I think we answered.
I'm good.
Commenting on.
Okay. Any other commissioner questions on the report?
Just want to ask, are we measuring carbon dioxide emissions? Is that the main thing the data shows over there?
There are a few emission types.
Measures, yeah.
Measures, thank you. But that is one of them.
Okay. Well, for me, since I'm new, if I can sort of understand the methodology, I think it's a very encouraging data. We're seeing 60-70% reduction over 13 years, and maybe some year has more drop, but, average. So I think that can help us set up a realistic goal,
It measures carbon dioxide equivalents, correct? I mean, it's all the different emission factors and that are then equated into carbon dioxide equivalents.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it takes into account all greenhouse gas emissions, not just carbon dioxide, but it's the carbon dioxide equivalent in metric tons. Yeah.
Okay, I imagine we might have some members of the public that want to comment on this item, and then we'll bring it back for any further discussion by the commissioners.
Yes, could I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Sure. Amiko, you'll have to help me out. It sounds like Addie, perhaps.
Yes, it's Addie.
Go ahead, Addie.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me speak. And I'm here representing Los Altos Youth Climate Action Team. We understand that the Environmental Commission and Outreach Team are working on outreach ideas. And as members of the public and representatives of our town, we would like to help improve that process. Much of the feedback that we're providing is based off of what we saw with the last Climate Action Plan in 2013, or structured around some of the information that we found in other climate action plans. First of all, one of the most important parts that I've seen in a climate action plan is, of course, outreach, and that needs to be a large step in the process. Outreach for climate action plan can be broken down into 5 steps: awareness, education, input, decision-making, and an open and public process. And I understand you probably already know this, but I just want to make it really clear. Really, that just means that the climate action and adaptation plan is being pushed out to the public in a way that easily allows them to access it and are able to submit feedback to help with that progress. I think that last time it was a problem that it wasn't easy to access, and the public had trouble accessing by allowing the public to be part of the process. The climate action adaptation plan is almost more likely to get done because they're holding all the key decision makers and task owners accountable. All the steps and further information on these steps are in the document that we sent.
Addie,
Thank you, Addie.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Amiko.
I was just gonna say thank you to her. I wasn't sure if I know you can't see that, Dawn, so I was just
maybe should say a few more words on included in the packet, I think, is a schedule for the public outreach aspect, and maybe you can talk about the 3 elements of that, and also generally the timeline.
Yeah, I did go over that. We were going to be doing the focus group meetings and then also a public workshop in addition to surveys. And the survey and one of the public workshops is scheduled for this month to be done at least by the end of April. We're still working on, although we did include a schedule in the packet, some of those dates are subject to change. We may need to move some of them up, but it would be pretty close to around what was included. And, Addie, we are happy to send you that as well, so that you can have that and include. And then I know you just sent me today your schedule. So the last one that you sent me for the consultant, we did get that over to them. And so we will do the same, with what you have as well. So we are sharing that information.
But sort of in general, a broad view, we're planning 3 different focus groups. We have 2 surveys, and we have 1 community meeting. All of that before the draft is reviewed by the Environmental Commission and then heard by the City Council. Sort of a real broad brush summary.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And that's, I think, Addie, if you want to refer those listening in, I think it's on page 10 of the second enclosure to the minutes, or attachment to the minutes, excuse me. Any other members of the public? And
We have
Amico.
Dawn.
I'm sorry.
There's no other members of the public present.
Okay, maybe we bring it back to the commissioners and see if they have any additional questions of you of the status and where things stand as of now, or other members of the subcommittee that wish to add any comments.
I would just add to, because this is going to be, such a large undertaking and important part of what the commission's doing in the coming year. I don't know if there'll be need for more subcommittees. If you need additional commissioners that aren't on the CAPS committee to be working on an aspect of it, I would just encourage you, so you're not burning out the 3 commissioners that are working on the CAP, that perhaps there could be other subgroups that needed to be formed. Just throwing an idea out there, if there are, breakout pieces that need to extra work.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, I just have a question on briefly, I saw the summary of the year 2018, the reduction from the city employee, I guess, travel. I'm a little surprised. It's pretty significant numbers, and I wonder, like, anybody know? Anyway, that's why, and also in general, I think we have more electric vehicles, and maybe where does that show, like the reductions from reduced, I guess, gas-driven cars from the chart? Is a question.
Lei, the real factor here is we're comparing things from 2005, and as Amico said at the opening of her comments, 2005 was prior to the initiation of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and also prior to collection of green waste as part of our solid waste stream. So there's been a lot of significant improvements just in by those couple items, and there's a few others. But now if you will, the reductions get a little bit more difficult. In other words, the biggest greenhouse gas emissions are in transportation and in buildings, and fossil fuel burning in buildings. And those are, the climate action plan is going to have to address those. And in order to meet our overall goals, we're going to have to advance both the electric car, reduction of vehicle miles traveled, and the reduction in the use of natural gas in our buildings. And those are going to be much more difficult. So what I'm saying is the steps become more incremental and more gradual. We're not going to have another Silicon Valley Clean Energy type event that's going to make a real large reduction change.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Anything to add to that, Bruno or Amico?
No, not really. I think clearly, you know, we know already, even though we need a little bit more details. I mean, these are raw data. And I think at the meeting last week, we had a lot of discussions around the data and what they meant and where it came from. So I think we need a little bit more details around a breakdown of where these emissions are today, 2018 anyway, compared to 2005, to understand where the progress was made. SVCE was clearly the big game changer between 2005 and 2018. But obviously, you know, the two largest gas emitters are still transportation and commercial and residential buildings. And it's mostly gas use in residential and commercial buildings today, and then vehicle mile travel. And I think it's going to be, you know, it's going to be obviously a bit more challenging to continue the kind of reduction we've seen unless we take some specific actions which could be significant for the community. That's the kind of stuff that will be obviously discussed at length and also reviewed with the community through the surveys and the focus groups and the forums. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's clearly, we're not going to all switch electric vehicles between now and 2030. So, you know, we're going to have to find ways of reducing emissions from transportation. And then with regards to buildings, you know, the big question is around, can we stop using gas in our buildings? These are the two ticket items.
I'll add one additional comment, and that is the success of Silicon Valley Clean Energy is also very important. We would be taking a step back, for example, if a lot of our residents and commercials decide that they opt out of Silicon Valley Clean Energy and start drawing energy from a source that is not renewable. So it's important that we all recognize and support the efforts of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, because their success also determines to some degree the success of us as a city in meeting our climate action goals.
There's no, I had one more.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Don.
Yeah, sure.
There's no accounting for individual consumer product use in the inventory, correct? Like
you're talking about like a consumption base?
Yes.
No. No, that was, we did discuss that, I think, early on about whether to include, you know, some type of consumption base, or even some will do like a life cycle analysis type framework, but that will not be included. You know, I think some of the challenge around that can be that a lot of that can be outside of your ability to track. You know, sometimes it can be, or it could be even double counted, I think is sometimes what ends up happening, depending on what type of emissions are being calculated in that type of consumption-based calculation. But no.
Well, maybe one thing to potentially consider is, even if it's not included necessarily in, you know, a reduction target or the overall goal, could it somehow be included in actions for, you know, residents to take, things like, you know, reducing meat consumption or something like that? Is there a less, you know, a way to include that in some promotional work or educational work that the city might do that wouldn't necessarily be accounted for in the inventory? Just a suggestion.
I certainly hope so. I mean, at least personally, I think it's important to. And so, you know, I think that's something we can bring up when that time comes to determine those things, and see how that can be worked in to some of the measures. Because I do agree with you.
Yeah, I think we talked about that early on, even when we were thinking about hiring a consultant, trying to see if there were ways we could do a consumption-based forecast, which, if done well, could be ideal because technically it takes into account everything. But it's very difficult to do because it requires to have information at the individual level in most cases. So it's not something easy to do, and usually it's not done. It's done, the way we're doing it is kind of the way everybody's doing it. But obviously, Laura, as you mentioned, I think it takes, it doesn't account for everything. And that's the downside of this cap. It's not going to take 100% of, it's not going to take into account 100% of the emissions that produce in Los Santos, because we'll be missing some consumption-based aspects of it. The only consumption-based factors that we're going to include is waste and water, right? But there's nothing about what you buy, where you buy it, where it comes from, how it's packaged, and all that stuff is not going to be included. So I agree that I think on top of the cap, we should think about education, finding ways of educating people around, making them understand that first, if we get to net zero, it's not really net zero. That's the caveat, I think, at the end of the day, and that there are ways they can be part of the solution by reducing their consumption or being very careful what they consume.
I think, Amico, that's something that perhaps maybe can be addressed in some of the summary discussion in the report. We might want to see if that's a potential.
Okay.
I'd like to move on now, unless there's any final comments or questions. The next, we wanted to talk a little bit about our work plan. I'd like to talk about B, C, and D, and then circle back around and see if there's any other updates, because B, C, and D all deal with our work plan, and those may cover most of the points. So let's go ahead and talk about the waste diversion rates. We had a discussion with or a presentation by Mission Trails at the last meeting, and I think the request is to do a little bit of discussion as to are there potential things we can do to increase our waste diversion rates. Ideas or comments?
Do you have the table from Mission Trail about waste, where it shows the three different parts of the waste that's being collected by Mission Trail and the diversion rate? Do you have that, Emiko? Or?
Let me work to see if I can grab that real quick. I
think, yeah.
Hold on.
So may I just ask a question? I think, is this encouraging people to recycle more, and also, the green waste and reducing the solid waste? Is this the effort?
Xiaoping, whatever we can do to, if you will, make Mission Trail's job easier, the higher our diversion is going to be. So therefore, things like communications to make sure your recyclables are as clean as possible increases the diversion rate. because that means when it goes in the recycle, there's a better chance of it actually being recycled. If it's fouled in some ways, it doesn't get recycled. So that's sort of a simplistic example, and I think this was just to be brainstorm for some additional ideas that we may have that for future investigation by the commission or a subcommittee of the commission.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Show you that. Everyone see that?
Yes.
So I think one thing that stood out to me in the presentation was he pretty clearly said that, single family homes do a pretty good job, actually a very good job of sorting, but that it's the multifamily, structures that are not nearly as good. So maybe some thought around if there's anything that the city, the commission can do to try and crack that nut, as it were, whether it's some sort of, is there any ordinance approach? It sounded like one of the problems can sometimes be not having correct bins in these multifamily structured homes and, larger apartment buildings. So is there any approach there to increase that, whether it's education, whether it's better outreach to the landlords or something like that? But that was definitely one piece that stood out to me as an area that needs more work.
Yeah, I would agree that, this data here doesn't break down between multifamily housing and the single. So I think if, the year to year, we're not seeing a reduction in the landfill and that it probably, I think education to especially the multifamily things, and perhaps that they haven't really seen what they do on a daily basis can contribute to the environment. So I would think we can show them what's happening, say in the last 5 years, and what happened at a single family situation, so they are aware of that. And the other thing is maybe, I think some incentive to the landlord for improving, like a 6 months goal or quarterly goal.
I think the best we can do right now is when you look at the landfill, and everything the waste is stable, right? Over the past 10 years, we sent to Mission Trail the same amount of waste. Landfill is stable as well. I think what we can do, I think that's where there is the most space for improvement, is trying to reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill. And the only way we can do that, obviously, is by helping people do it, or educate them, or give them the tools to be able to do better, which is composting more. So food, instead of going into the normal green bin, or the gray bin, would go into the green bin. There is probably some plastic and some paper that goes also in the gray bin that should go into the recycling bin. So I think it's around the landfill probably that we can do the most by trying to reduce the amount of tonnage that goes to the landfill. Now, in terms of paper and plastics, that's a big question, because I think in general what happens is that first, a lot of the plastics that are put in the recycle bin are not going to be recycled because they have no value, so they end up in the landfill. So when you see 25 or 28% is recycled, actually it's not really true. Some of it is going back into landfill because it can't be recycled for various reasons, economic reasons mostly. So I'm not sure we can do very much around recycling right now, except we can increase the amount of waste that goes in the recycling bin and increase the amount of waste that goes in the composting bin. That's probably where we can have the most impact.
The one area that I can think of, and I agree with you, Bruno, is that, and I think Laura hit on one of them, the multifamily commercial disposal effort, and the other is construction debris. And I think there's two parts to it that I would suggest that maybe Amico, if you have any additional ideas, but to me there's two directions you can go. One is some sort of incentive for those groups, you know, demolition, multifamily and commercial, some sort of incentive for them to do a better job keeping the stuff out of the gray bin, so to speak, and using the green and blue bins more. So some sort of incentive to them on that. And then the other thing is, if they're not doing it, then it's an ordinance for some sort of penalty that basically, you know, their actions being that they're not doing a good enough job is costing the community. It's at a cost to the community, and so therefore you ordinance it somehow. I particularly like, maybe you had to do some sort of incentive and a soft penalty, if you will, to start with. Or maybe if it's too soft of a penalty, then people you know, they say it's not worth it and I'll just pay the penalty. But I think, you know, you have to look at the alternatives for both the incentive and the ordinance.
So I would, yeah, I was the one that was thinking incentive. What do you think that they would get the ban out of that, so that they would, you know, they would educate their tenants more, and their, you know, what would be the best form for that? Maybe offer some sort of discount to their utility rate or something like that. I don't know if our city can do that.
Well, I think there are things that can be done, which we would have to discuss, you know, certainly at a different time. But for example, construction debris, for example, go to the landfill right now, and they usually don't go through Mission Trail. Contractors use their own services to take their construction debris, and that goes to the landfill most of the time. So there is no sorting out, there is no putting wood aside to try to recycle the wood or whatsoever. And I think that might be one aspect that we can improve, and like Don was saying, by either incentives or some kind of an ordinance that would basically stipulate how to deal with construction debris. And there are ways that you can deconstruct and recycle a lot of the what you gather at the end. Like, you know, wood is a very good example. Even cement, things like that can be recycled instead of going directly to the landfill. Something special.
And I would add the incentive, you know, for at least, you know, when I was with the building department, we did see a lot of deconstruction, or at least a lot of requests to deconstruct as opposed to demolish. But a lot of that stuff can be a tax incentive as well, because you can donate a lot of that, and that can be a huge benefit as well.
Yeah, that's great.
So to add to that, for the multifamily, I think with SB 1383, at least for the organics part of it, that will be mandatory. And then within 4 years after implementation, there is penalties begin to be assessed on that part of it. Another thing that I know with the education and outreach is, educating them on how to purchase more responsibly, to not have to try to recycle more, but to just at the beginning of the process, determining what you purchase first so that there really isn't anything left. There's a lot of, pop-ups with zero waste stores, whether they be, online or places you can go that, do try to eliminate packaging for a lot of products, things that you eat, that you face wash, shampoo, things like that. So.
Miko, is
So,
this something that, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that definitely the incentives for deconstruction as opposed to sending to landfill for the construction waste is a big deal. When we rebuilt our house 5 years ago, we did deconstruction, and there was quite a significant tax benefit, and everything was taken off and sent to Habitat for Humanity. So it's that's definitely something to popularize more. And then on the waste diversion thing, the one thing I got from the discussion with Mission Trails was that plastics may not be the biggest component waste-wise that gets sent to the landfill. The bigger component, and I think maybe the most impactful immediately, would be the yard waste and composting. So keeping organic waste out of the gray bins as well as the blue bins would be something that's relatively easy and higher impact. So those are my two things to add to that.
Miko, is this something that perhaps it may not be in the staff's work plan to look on these for ideas, or is this something that's of periodic discussion that you may be able to bring some of the ideas forward from the staff that we may be able to add to?
Are you referring to the different incentives?
Things like, yeah, incentives or educational activities to increase the diversions rates.
I think it would be beneficial if, the Environmental Commission, put something together for staff. I think obviously, we unfortunately have quite a bit of turnover. So, staff that was there 2 years ago isn't going to be there. And so I think re-educating them is definitely key in terms of the ones that are going to be face-to-face with applicants and the ones doing the projects, whether they be the homeowners or the contractors. So definitely, I think that's a benefit there.
Can I, since this is a topic that is of interest to all, I believe we have a waste subcommittee, right? Or there was a subcommittee that was working on the Mission Trade agreement and so on. I was wondering if that would be the right subcommittee to start thinking about what can be done to reduce waste beyond what we're doing already, addressing the deconstruction issue, addressing the organics issue, which is trying to compost it rather than putting in the gray bin and so on. Would that make sense to have the subcommittee take a look at that?
I agree that this is something that I feel like needs to be in a working committee, and I believe it was Lay, Don, and I who did the Mission Trails contract update so we could convene, and even I think would make sense to maybe do a little research on best practices in other municipalities, and start to come up with some more specific, detailed ideas. I think that makes sense to me.
We could create some. I would like to think that maybe we could open this up for people with that want to join a new subcommittee, but maybe the original committee can come forward with a basic idea, so people who volunteer then to look into it, have at least a generalized picture of the scope. Laura, do you think it's something that we could come up with a one-page thing about this is the type of issues that are of concern, and then we talk about it the next meeting, and maybe not necessarily pick the exact same committee, but maybe it has some of the same members, but give others an opportunity as well to participate.
Absolutely, good point. We have new commissioners, and yes, we should. I didn't mean to suggest we should just continue on with the same committee, but the idea of, yes, a subcommittee investigation, and whether that's to form it tonight or to have the existing one put to some scope, put some parameters around it, I think it's fine either way.
I think that maybe we've taken the discussion as far as unless somebody wants to say, Don, you're wrong, but we maybe have taken it to a point now that I think it'd be good to develop a one-page thing that we can talk about at the next meeting, and maybe appoint individuals to look into these specific items, at the next meeting. So, I'm certainly willing, and Lay, myself, and you were on the subcommittee. Maybe we take a stab at, a one-page description, and then discuss it at our next meeting, with the idea of appointing a quote-unquote new subcommittee at that point.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. I agree. I can take the initial draft for that page of items and share with you too, and then and you can revise, and we can, good idea. Next time anybody, commissioners, take items for continuing actions.
Is that reasonable, Amico?
Yes.
Okay, then Laura, I, and Lay will come up with a general idea of approach, so that we have if you will, basically a little bit of a charter for the group that's going to be formed to look into it. Okay, in the interest of time, I'd like to keep moving on, and I think Laura and David on the Environmental Education Fund Subcommittee, do you want to update us?
Yeah, since David's not here, so we did meet, and we talked about some what would be our next steps to continue both education and perhaps use some of the funds we have available. So we talked about similar to the competition that happened last time. It would be another competition, but this would be focused more specifically around the climate action plan, again, with an idea to have teams from local schools and have them kind of compete to have an idea of a project or a program to decrease, their carbon emissions, either from their group or maybe outreach to residents, or some sort of, new idea to reduce carbon emissions in the city. And then we haven't quite sorted out exactly what the winnings would be used for, whether it would be, you know, could potentially be used for implementing that project or program, you know, assuming that it would be, the funds would go to a school or other nonprofit. So similar in some ways to what we did last time, but again, more focused on engaging, especially engaging some students in how we can make an impact in our climate emissions, so that it also ties into our work on the CAP. So, you know, we still need to talk more further about timeline and, you know, given the timeline, whether it would be in person or remote, and some of the further details, but that's the initial thinking.
Did you have any thoughts about the forum that may take place? You know, the forum that this would occur in, would it be in conjunction with the History Museum again?
We talked more, and Lei, feel free to jump in too, since she was there. We talked more about doing it on our own. That doesn't mean we can't collaborate with the History Museum, but this would be more of a commission, self-directed project.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I was bringing one idea. Oh, maybe we can do some kind of a beautiful Los Altos student art exhibition in conjunction with the History Museum. But maybe we think, I guess the activities related to our CAP will be more beneficial than some kind of a exhibition, I mean competition, or some kind of a through the art activity that I guess promotes the emphasis on green Los Altos ideas. But so that was our part of the discussion, I guess. But I guess
Okay.
in terms of we want to have local students from schools to engage venture ideas about contributing to the climate action plans, like the reduction of carbon footprint. I guess we need to prepare the outline and somehow made it to public, correct? I mean, that's in the line of our engaging, I guess, the process of doing, realizing our goals for the activities. Is that our next step? If all commissioners are, I guess, agreeing with this approach.
I think we would probably need to meet again and flesh it out a little bit more before. Yeah, I don't think it needs a formal vote per se, but I would imagine that we would have a little bit more detail around it before, and kind of get the thumbs up from the commission before moving forward.
Okay.
I agree with that, Laura. I guess what I would ask the other commissioners now is if they have any other preliminary ideas or something that they want to throw into your hopper as you're developing this idea, or other ideas that commissioners would like to see you investigate as well. So I'll pose those couple of questions and let other commissioners speak up.
One idea, Lei just say, you know, about say high schooler, you know, students. I think encourage them to bike to school or doing their sports activities or other things. I think encouraging they bike more than they drive. That certainly can cut down the the carbon emissions and others. I think the arts is a great idea. I like that a lot. Yeah,
I was just going to offer, I kind of stepped in just for this as a one-off on this subcommittee, and I'm happy to step back. And, David was very involved last year, and he's, I'm assuming going to continue. And Lei was also on the subcommittee. So if there's another commissioner who wants to step in, I had just kind of stepped in for this brainstorming. But the logistical things are maybe not kind of where my head's at. So if there's another commissioner who wants to take this and run with it, please feel free to. I will step aside, let's say.
I think why don't we continue to flesh out the idea a little bit, and when you have again something that is sort of directional in nature, then I think we can look at changing players in the group. Does that make sense, Laura?
Yeah, that's fine with me either way. I mean, I think that can work. So the original subcommittee would come back next month, and then we can see if we want to make a switch.
Do we have a timeline on when we need to somehow, not spending the fund, but is there a timeline? Oh, so far? No. No,
there's no timeline, except it's only a small amount of money, and it's more or less to clear the books, if you will, at some point, since it's been hanging on for a number of years. But if it's not until next year that the thing's organized and ready to go, or it's in the late this year, that's fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Liu's comments, and I guess it's not maybe just one item or one-time thing. Maybe we can continue to encourage activities for the public to engage. So biking, art, competition can be continuing for our, I guess, actions.
May I know the size of the education fund that has been allocated for this?
Oh, we probably have, do we still have half or all still, like about $1,700?
It's $1,636.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further comments, then why don't we do this, Laura, Lei, and get together with David and see if you can put together a little flesh of an idea, and then next meeting we'll bring it up and we'll more formalize. If everybody's agreeable to the generalized direction, then we'll formulate a committee to move forward with it.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
Okay, I want to move on to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy. In your packet, there were some basic next month. Don Bray of Silicon Valley Clean Energy is scheduled to come to the committee and sort of give a short presentation, and we wanted to put together some questions that are topics that we would like to see him address to help educate us and our community members that listen in. So there was a list of 12 bullets or so, and I want to open it up for comments on those questions or topics. Hearing no people speak up, I've looked through the bullet point items, and I think generally they're pretty good. I would put them sort of in two classifications of two types of things. One is providing basic information on the Silicon Valley clean energy customers, you know, residential, commercial, and the total, what the demand is, what the source mix is, if it's in state, out of state, and what are the plans for the future time of use balance. And so those to me all fit in the generalized topic of the current information of their customer base and anticipation of their customer base and their power sources. And so I would sort of put the first group number of bullets into that, and then the last 4 bullets I would put into sort of a generalized category of providing an update on their various community benefit programs, including such things as building electrification, water heating and HVAC heat pumps, EV use, and so on. And if they could provide metrics on the programs and then provide some of their future ideas on some of these community benefit programs that they have. So what the current status is and the future status. So I saw in those bullets, I saw those 2 basic topics. And maybe I should quit talking now and let somebody else chime in.
That sounds right to me, and I think it will be, you know, a good update. And I'm sure, you know, Don is very knowledgeable and can think on his feet if we have other questions that come up in the discussion.
What I can propose to the group here is I would basically take these bullets and I put them into the 2 categories that I've talked about, and most of the bullets in some form lie under one of those 2 categories, so that Don has some specific items that he can address. Now, I am making the assumption that, like I said, the first group of bullets, we're really interested in what Silicon Valley Clean Energy, what their electric mix is and what they're supplying and stuff. And we're really not asking Don for, you know, the California Energy Grid or PG&E's specifics to be included with that. Although he may draw some comparisons with what PG&E is, but I think we want him to really, we're asking him about what Silicon Valley Clean Energy does. So I would put that focus on the bullets in the first group.
Sounds like there's some noise. I wonder if
somebody may be doing some dishes.
Yeah.
But what I can volunteer to do is work with Amico and put these bullets, unless there's additional ideas that commissioners want to add, I would put these bullets into the 2 general categories that I'm talking about and finalize that and send it off to Don in advance of the meeting next month.
Sounds good.
That sounds, yep.
Okay, Amico, I'll put together a draft using these ideas and send it to you for some editing, and then we'll get it out in the package that goes out, as well as to Don in advance of the next meeting.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, now I'll go back to A. Anything else on our work plan that that commissioners want to discuss at this time? Okay, let's move on to on.
Oh, I suppose March 23rd, there's 11 items. Anyway, I don't think there's any item that relates very directly to our commission. It's a lot of budget and reports financially, and kind of public hearing for 2 projects, 3 projects, and so that is my report.
Yeah, the March 9th, there was a hearing on basically some bicycle lanes along Almond Avenue and some other things like that tangentially have environmental issues, but nothing specific to the commission itself.
Yeah.
Amico, you want to take over for it now?
Sorry about that. I got kicked out. My internet doesn't like me at this time of night. So were you asking about city staff updates? I kind of missed a section there.
Yeah, we talked about the March 9th and March 23rd city council meetings, and I was turning it back to you for the city staff updates and some new assignments for the next couple of city council meetings.
Okay, so a couple of updates. I'll do that first. So the joint city council meeting will happen with the Environmental Commission on May 4th. That is starts at 5 o'clock. Each commission will get 30 minutes, and the Environmental Commission is second. So probably around 5:30-ish. And then, and Dawn, I can send you the link, or the city clerk will send the link to you for that meeting.
Amico, would you send around an invite to the commissioners for that meeting?
Yes, absolutely. I can send it to everyone. And then on a fun note, to celebrate Earth Day, which is April 22nd, sorry. I have the 20th on my mind for another reason. You know, we're doing a virtual Earth Day type celebration this year. You know, we don't typically, the city doesn't do that, but we had some submittals from some elementary school kids. It was just, you know, very inspiring. They had done some research on the Ohlone Indians, which was great, and they had sent in these posters on how to be more sustainable. And so we wanted to honor that and put it up on a virtual display. But then in addition to that, we wanted to get the community involved as well. And so you've all been getting emails from me asking if you would, you know, submit a picture of yourself with your favorite tree, or it could just be the tree itself. You don't have to be in the photo if you don't want to. But we are putting together that collage. The pictures need to be in by the 16th, so Friday. And it's just a fun way to celebrate Earth Day. So if you're able to, it'd be great to have everyone participate. And then again, because I missed this part, I know I have a note here that we were going back to updates from the February 9th and February 23rd meeting, which February 9th was David, and he's not here tonight. And maybe Laura already did this one, but February 23rd was, I believe I had Laura.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I think Laura, you probably dropped off before we got to this point. Anything in particular you want to comment on about the February 23rd City Council meeting?
Nothing that I can remember at this point. I now remember that I had that on my mind last time, but I don't. And I think there was one item, but it wasn't anything. But yeah, honestly, it was not on my mind at this point anymore. So whatever it wasn't too shattering.
Okay.
Did we? Oh, and I already have assignments for April 13th. That is, Bruno will be attending that one. I just need April 27th.
Any volunteers for April 27th?
I can do that one.
Xiaoping,
yes.
Is that you?
Yes, Xiaoping.
Thank you.
And how about May 11th?
I can do that May 11th.
Oh, I think I remembered. I may be remembering wrong, but I think it was the council was going over their council priorities and basically finalizing them. And just to note, I think we have already noted that environmental sustainability was one of their priorities. So I think we covered that last meeting anyway.
Thank you. So I think I heard Xiaoping say April 27th, and was it Lei, you said May 11th?
Yes, I said that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amiko, for clarifying that Earth Day photos. So can be a tree alone. That's a good thing.
Yeah. We saw some cute ideas where people just had their hands showing or something, be creative. And, of course, you don't have to include yourself in the picture.
Fun.
Anything else, Amiko?
No, I don't. I did have on the agenda the potential future agenda items. I don't know if you wanted to go over those.
Yeah, I'd like to talk briefly about them and see if there's any other items for potential future agenda. We can go over these three, or maybe can toss it open to see if people have other ones that they want to add. Okay, well then I'll talk a little bit about the three. The three, there's sort of a few of my ideas. One is our state assembly member Mark Bergman has introduced a Assembly Bill 1346, basically to regulate gas-fueled small engines. And since this is engines for landscaping and other uses over a period of time. But I thought that this bill sort of is related to an element that we had been talking about previously, and I thought it would be an idea as to maybe either the commission could look into this bill and now would be the time to get a letter to the state assemblymen and senators if there's a support for this bill or suggested improvements to it. The bill right now is in, I think, the Natural Resources Committee. But I wanted to throw it out because I thought this is something that maybe a couple of commissioners could look into and bring back at the next meeting a draft of the support or modifications to the bill, and then with the agreement of city staff, either the commission or the city council could send such a letter on to the assembly.
I think that's a great idea. It kind of begs the question of why don't we do this for more of the potential legislation that's proposed? But I am happy to participate in that effort to draft a letter.
Anybody else have interest in this area?
I was wondering if it would be useful now that I think the bills are being discussed in the various committees, whether it would be useful to have a summary of what's being discussed and has a chance in going into the summer sessions. Because that's one of them. I know there are a lot of many other bills that relate to the environment that are being discussed.
You're exactly right, Bruno, and Amico attached to what was it, agenda item 3, Amico, or was it 2, where it had a whole list of bills and their current status. And I think that if there's a particular one or something, I think you can bring it up as I'm bringing up this one as for an idea. I only picked this one because it dealt with our gas leaf blower item that we've discussed for the last year or two, and I thought it might be something of interest. But yes, commissioners, if you see others that are interested, we could potentially do something similar to them.
Yeah,
I guess. I heard one volunteer, Laura, and I have some information on this, so I'd be happy to work with you. And if there's someone else that wants to join us, that's fine as well. Okay,
sorry.
this is Laura, you and I'm sorry, was there someone else?
No, Don, I was wondering it would be maybe an agenda item for discussion at the next meeting to have the commissioners take a look at those bills that are listed. And maybe we can have a discussion around which one we should pay close attention to and maybe try to work on.
Okay.
So who will send, was the bills already sent it to us that I had missed, or?
it was in the packet.
Oh.
It was in tonight's agenda packet.
Oh, okay.
And I appreciated seeing them. I mean, it was a pretty comprehensive list as far as I could tell.
Amico, you must have pulled this off of some source. What was the source?
It was actually internal. One of the groups that we're part of is keeping a list, and so we go through and kind of update it as the developments happen. But I want to say it might have been through our WRC
Okay, but there's quite a few of them related to environmental issues, as Bruno pointed out, and I think that that's a good future agenda item to review those and see if there's ones that, you know, commissioners want to bring up to at least discuss. I've brought up this, like I say, the small off-road engine issue because of the prior interest of the commission.
Yeah, I wanted to include it because I know that in past discussions we had talked about, you know, monitoring and keeping up with legislation as it's developing, because a lot of those were also tied to, as you can see, you know, recyclables and plastics and along those lines as well. I'm happy to share the actual spreadsheet that we're keeping. It might be easier if the commissioners want to make their own updates on that spreadsheet. It's probably a little bit easier to use than trying to go back to the PDF.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep in mind that many of these bills are not going to make it. So I think we need to understand which ones are the most likely to make it to the floor. Because I think that's part of the issue. We don't want to be working on bills that that have no chance of making it to the General Assembly. And I don't know if we have an understanding of that.
Yeah. Miko, that would be good. So if it could be in a spreadsheet, if you could distribute it in a spreadsheet format that people could add another column with their personal notes on it, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And I'd also request that the one chart that you brought up with about our discussion on the climate plan, which had the progress chart, could you also send that out to all commissioners?
The slide that I was sharing, the PowerPoint.
Yeah, the draft slide. Yeah, that slide on the draft 2005-2018.
Sure.
Okay. The second item for future potential is I think we may be headed towards another dry period, and I was thinking that perhaps if commissioners would like, maybe in sometime later this year or next couple of meetings, let's see, there's maybe July or August, that we see if we can have Cal Water come and discuss. Would commissioners like to see if we can arrange that?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's always useful to hear from key people like that, providers.
Okay.
Sure.
Nico, maybe I can work with you and see if we can reach out to Cal Water and see if we can get someone to talk about potential issues.
Okay, sounds good.
And my third item is that we're going to be opening up the community center, the new community center, and maybe this is a question to see if the Environmental Commission wants to get involved in this, but I would at least like to have you know, some inquiries and just have an understanding of what the community center is going to do as it opens up for things like food service and other food service events at the new community center, and what type of restrictions are going to be placed on that. And that's sort of an informational item for me, but it could be that maybe if there's not too detailed of a thing, they may when Amico inquires about this, someone may say, oh, you know, can you give us a hand developing some ideas here? I don't know what the status is, and I don't think you know what the status is either, Amico, at this point.
No, not very much.
Is this an item of interest to commissioners?
Well, I think we could potentially broaden it too, because, you know, as the community center plan was developed, and there definitely was, you know, a focus on not only the building, but also, you know, the interior of it, having educational aspects to it. So maybe a, you know, general update as it gets closer, and there's more detail around that as it gets closer to opening. I think that would be interesting. And one aspect of it could be, you know, how events will be handled.
I like the broader approach, Laura. Is this potentially something that could be arranged, Amico?
I can certainly look into that.
To just sort of
I think it's a good idea.
You'd call it sort of a status update on the opening and environmental related efforts on it. You know, for example, I know that they've commissioned some artwork of environmental nature for the community center.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, we can talk further, but I would like to perhaps hear a presentation about the sustainability aspects, the green building aspects of the building itself, and then the educational aspects as well that will be added in, you know, both in the gardening, the landscaping, and then also I believe in the foyer and the common areas there were going to be educational, you know, information about the building, and then, as you said, as youth, you know, how those things will be, those sustainability aspects will be incorporated as the center is used by different participants. So I don't know how you encapsulate that in, but
I think you did a good job, Laura. There's sort of three aspects: the building itself and its sustainable features, the building and its educational aspects, and then I'd say the building and its use, and all from an environmental sustainability perspective.
Yep.
Don, this is Shante. I would like to add a potential agenda. This has to do with the Lehigh quarry and the Kaiser, you know, Lehigh cement plant and the quarry. I know that Cupertino has a special committee that they are dedicated in monitoring their environmental pollution over time, and they're very active on that. So what I like to propose is that, you know, I think the air pollution, the water from this cement plants, you know, they have been operating over probably 70 years. And also the traffic on Foothill Expressway. So I like to propose if we could consider that some of us can be involved in collaboration with Cupertino efforts in really carefully monitoring and restrict further expansion plan and also reclamation. So we get status updates, we can update our residents here. Yeah, I think it affects the whole city.
Okay, yeah, it's something that certainly borders the city of Los Altos. I think one thing, I think that on the 4th of May, we should talk about, you know, our plans, because that's that's going to be an item of significant, it could be an item of significant work. And so I would like to bring that up with City Council on the 4th. And also, I think we had to have an understanding also of how much, if this requires any effort or involvement of city staff, or if this is solely something by the commission. And
Sure.
I don't know, Miko, I think one thing is I don't believe that the city's been too involved in the process going forward of of Lehigh and their reclamation and their application process. It's really in the hands of the county, but it's certainly something that that we should be aware of as in a general nature. And so maybe we start to talk about what it looks like, or if you have an idea, Xiaoping, if you have an idea of what you could see this entailing, we could talk about it at the next meeting, or have an idea so that we have how big is the bread box, if you will, on the task or item.
Yeah, I'm happy that I think we have some time. I can get reliable data, and we can make a presentation really, pivotal data, that environmental impact one, bring to the attention to our council. I think I would think this would be requiring our city to also allocate some resources, could be financially or personnel-wise, to work in collaboration with Cupertino together. Personally, I attended a 2-hour meeting. Joe Simitian was hosting that. I think basically he was updating people about the last year and the two various kind of monitoring efforts, various source of pollution that they have caused, and if they have improved or stay stable, or their future plan and reclamation plan. It's a lot of things, but I think we like to have probably very concise presentation to our council members. I think it's, just really bring up the their attention to these matters. I'm happy to, when I gathering some of these things, and to share with the council, with our commission members before the May 4th meeting, and welcome people's suggestions and inputs.
Can I ask? Yeah.
Go ahead, Bruno.
No, I'm not very familiar. I mean, I know where it is, and I've bicycled by the plant many times. But my question is, that's on Cupertino proper, right? It's not, it borders Los Altos, but it's not on Los Altos proper. None of it, right?
Right.
It's very close, especially the Lehigh cement plant. It's less than a mile from the south side of Los Altos neighborhood. Yeah, I bike there myself too.
So it's really a Cupertino issue, but I mean, we may want to be involved. I was asking that question because as part of the cap, obviously, we don't need to count their emissions because it's not within the boundaries of Los Altos.
Right. And I would second Don's concern about the scope of this, and also the fact that, the city has no jurisdiction. So I would seek to have a larger conversation about this before putting this on the commission work plan, and even perhaps, presenting that to the council as something that we're we've gained consensus as a commission. That's something that we're taking on. I'm not sure it's within our purview.
The air travels, and the water, we have the Permanente Creek runs through actually some parts of Los Altos and to the Mountain View. So it's not independent. I just want to, yeah.
Air and water move, that's correct. But Bruno, you're right. All of Lehigh is within county property except for a very small sliver. And I think it's of a haul road that is within the city limits of Cupertino. So it's county land, and the county is in charge of the permitting and stuff. And Xiaoping is correct. I've attended, I think, all of Joe Submittian's presentations on the Lehigh. I think I've gone to 3 or 4. I can't remember now. And he talks about the violations and permit status and all the agencies that are involved. And really, it's the county is the permitting agency, and then there's oversight by the air district, the water district, the water resources, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and discharge and reclamation requirements and so on. So there's a really lot involved there. But it is, it's not within the city limits. Maybe that's enough, but I think that I don't know how best to do it, but I think we'd have to get an idea of scope and stuff. We have written a letter in the past in support of Cupertino's actions a couple of years ago. Their activities when there was violations. My understanding from the recent Joe Submittian event is that right now the plant is in compliance. They have they don't have any outstanding violations as of this time. That over the last couple of years, those have all been cleared. But they do have an application to expand the quarry operations and to modify the reclamation plan for the quarry.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll talk with Amico a little bit, and then we can have a discussion at a future commission meeting as to what we would get involved with, or what the scope of involvement would be before we actively engage with it.
Okay.
Anything else on future agenda items? I don't want to. Amico or anyone, closing thoughts?
I do not have anything else.
Okay, I'm sorry we ran a little. I try to keep it within an hour and a half, and we ran a little bit longer tonight, but I appreciate everybody's participation. And I think there's a few people with a couple of tasks to do for the next meeting. And we look forward to getting those together. And then our next meeting is what, May 10th, is it, Miko?
It's May 10th, yeah. So I believe it's just, yeah. And
Yep,
May 11th is the
10th.
council meeting, yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then look forward to talking with everybody on the 10th, and we look forward to Don Bray, our ex-commissioner, coming and talking about Silicon Valley clean energy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emiko.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.